moving. The hearing is developing. It's believed that the baby can hear mother's heartbeat or her upset tummy, whichever is loudest, I guess. The eyes have developed to the point that they're sensitive to light and shine on mama's tummy. The fetus will turn away because it senses that light. So that's where a 15-week baby is in mama's belly. And up to that point, Mississippi saying you can abort, but not after that. Okay. Now there's real hope. The reason this made news, the decision won't come down until next summer. But as you know, the current Supreme Court makeup is fairly conservative, and so there's hope that Roe v. Wade will be overturned next summer. And in fact, after the oral arguments, I went out and read at least 3 different articles, and all of them from both sides of the issue were thinking that Roe was going to be overturned, which is great news. Roe's been the law of the land since 1973. Okay. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Let me give you the statistics. 42 million per year worldwide babies are aborted. That's 125,000 babies per day. 620,000 in 2018 were aborted. That's the most recent statistics I could get. That's actually down from 1.1 million in 2008. So there's been improvement in this, substantive improvement in this. But that's still 620,000 babies.
In the USA.
In the U.S., yes. There's been 62 million babies aborted since Roe became the law of the land. 62 million. Try to get your mind around that. 48 years ago. To give you some idea, let me back up to that. How many Jews were killed in the Holocaust? The reason this is called the modern Holocaust. How many Jews were killed in the 6 million? How many Russians were killed under Stalin's rule? Does anybody know?
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows exactly. It's estimated around 7 million. Okay. 1 million by legal death convictions, but another 6 million just through prison camps and so forth. So this dwarfs that, is the point. Okay, this dwarfs it. In the U.S., by age 45, 1/3 of the women will have had an abortion. Does that surprise anybody? In China, over half the women have had at least one abortion. Okay? Let's talk about China just a little bit. For years, they had a one family, one child rule. Okay? That was the law. And if you became pregnant a second time, they forced abortion. The woman had no choice. She had to abort. That has since changed. In 2015, they quit enforcing that rule and went to a 2-child per family policy. Does anybody know why?
Because there were too many girls and they wanted boys.
Okay, there's part of that. Actually, that's the opposite of it, though. There was too many boys and not enough girls. Okay, somebody else said something? Population control. That was the reason they instituted the 1 child per family, is because they were worried about feeding everybody. But what they figured out now, economists have convinced the leadership that they've got too few babies. They're not going to have enough population to support their aging generation. This wasn't a change. They didn't have a moral awakening. Okay. This was purely economics, in that they didn't have enough young people to support the old people. And so they have to have more. They're trying to increase the birth rate. And since then, just this year, they've moved that to 3 child per family. Now, the state propaganda is selling this as this is women's rights. We're trying to make it more equal for women. We're sympathetic to the women's plight in our country. It's not that. Don't believe that. It's pure economics. They don't have their birth rate is so suppressed. They're in real trouble. And in fact, their economics shows that they're going to begin to start weakening. You know, there's been a lot of news about their economic superpower. Well, this is a real problem for them, their birth rate. And so they've switched roles. Instead of suppressing women's rights and suppressing the birth of it, now they're trying to manipulate women to have more kids. They're encouraging women to get married and have children. They're exploiting them on the other side. Does that make sense? Using them like cattle because they're going to go broke. Okay? So if you hear that coming out of China, understand what's motivating it. Yeah.
I have a saying that, I mean, if I'm saying it's true. My little granddaughter was a little Chinese girl,
Okay.
and her mother was pregnant with her and was coming over to the States, and a Christian woman was sitting with her, and she was going to have the little girl,
It's going to be aborted.
woman was going to have abortion, and she talked her out of it, and we got her.
Yeah.
That was wonderful.
Yeah.
We just,
The blessing. Yes, absolutely.
yeah.
Okay. Why do women have abortions? This is the stats still. 21%, then these are based on answers that women give when they're surveyed before they have the procedure done by Planned Parenthood. Okay? 21% is inadequate finances. Not ready for responsibility, 21%. 16% of women's life would be changed too much. 12%, problems with relationships, unmarried. Too young and too immature, 11%. 8%, children are grown. She has all the children that she wants. 3%, baby has possible health problems. Less than 1%, pregnancy caused by rape or incest. Even though if you're debating this with someone, that's the first issue that gets brought up, right? What about in the case of rape or incest? That's less than 1% of the abortions. Okay. Comments on any of that? Does that surprise anybody? Yeah.
It seems like one thing that I'm not real knowledgeable about all of that, the things that I've heard also, one is the mother's health is in jeopardy because of it, but it's not even listed on there.
No, I mean, it's going to be a very low percentage. It's very, my understanding, very rare that the woman's health is jeopardized by pregnancy, that they can't save the baby as well. Even though that's cited, you're right, exactly right. That's the two things. What about the case of rape or incest, or what about the health of the mother? Yeah.
This is a very hard subject, and it affects a lot of people.
It does.
And it's oftentimes not covered in class because it's such a hard subject and it affects people. It looks like about 95% of them reasons itself.
Absolutely. Purely out of the convenience for the mother.
There is some consideration, like 1/3 of the women over 45 had an abortion. There's certain delicacies we should use.
Yeah, so hadn't got to that yet, but there's two victims here. One is obviously the baby, but also the mother. Most of these abortions are very young mothers, okay? And they are being told that this is their only option, okay? And they may not have all the facts presented to them, especially in our inner cities where a lot of these abortion clinics exist. And so we find that a lot of these mothers are victimized as well, and they live with that their whole lives. There's a stigmatism attached to it. It's shrouded in secrecy, okay, and shame and guilt. And we need to be, that's one of the responses that we need to have when we are dealing with this with somebody that's went through this or is currently dealing with it, understand that the mothers are just almost as much a victim as the children, okay? Because even though those reasons are for convenience of the mother, those are also very good reasons, very scary things if you're facing that, if you're a 16-year-old facing raising a baby, right? So we need to be aware of that. Thank you. That's a great point. Yeah.
There's some, child, 15, 16-year-old girl, maybe even a 13-year-old girl, they're afraid to tell their parents because of the consequences of maybe the dad or the mom.
Yeah.
So the government, in their wise decision, decided that a girl could have an abortion without telling her parents.
Yes.
Because a lot of times the girl would commit suicide. So they did one wrong thing to cover up another wrong thing.
Yeah.
They actually did.
Yeah. And where is that fear coming from? You think? Why are they afraid to tell mom and dad?
Because they know it's wrong now, that they did something that they shouldn't have been doing.
Yeah. I mean, and this is mostly in religious households, Catholic, Protestant. And so we need to be having these conversations. Back to the point, we don't talk about this in class. We need to be talking about it, right? Because it's real. I mean, it's affected families in here, believe me. It does. It's a little bit like our topic of the Holy Spirit. We don't talk about it enough, and it needs to be addressed more. And that's, well, we're talking about it today, so we'll check that box. But 4% cited other reasons. Legal background. Before I get into that, our nation, this is one of those deals where we're deeply divided, okay? It's mainly along political division lines. 49% of the population, this is according to the latest Gallup poll that I could find, support abortion, or women's right to choose is the way they put it. 47% oppose. The Democratic Party, Planned Parenthood, which is the leading provider of abortions, believe that abortion should be legal and available without restrictions at all, in all circumstances, no matter what the circumstance is. And I'm not picking on the Democratic Party. This is in their platform. Okay? I went and looked at it, pulled it up. I was gonna, but it was too long. But they basically no restrictions at all, up to 9 months. Planned Parenthood president stated that she does not believe life begins until after birth. This has been a few years ago, a Florida Planned Parenthood official testified before the Florida legislature in 2015, okay, so 6 years ago, that the right to abort extends beyond the womb. Think about that. So what she was saying, as long as the umbilical cord is attached, that mother can make the decision about that baby's right to live. That was the Planned Parenthood president of the Florida chapter. In 1973, 2 cases were decided by the Supreme Court in a 7-2 decision. Wasn't really close. Roe v. Wade legalized abortion in all 50 states. This is the one that's the most famous, okay? This made it, before that, each state decided. Once the Supreme Court stepped in with this case and made their decision, it legalized it across the entire nation. It became the law of the land. Doe versus Bolton extended the right to abortion to entire 9 months of pregnancy, okay? But Roe v. Wade did not do that. It was this next case that extended it to the 9 months. Had it done that, the court, in its wisdom, divided the pregnancy into trimesters. That's not a medical term. That was not a term that was used before the court stepped in for legal purposes and divided it into trimesters. First trimester, the court said there should be no restrictions. Second trimester, no restrictions, but allowed states to pass regulations. No, I'm sorry. After the first trimester, there was no restrictions, but allowed states to pass regulations to ensure a woman's safety. They could impose restriction if it wants to protect the child, but still must allow access for health reasons. And the court adopted the World Health Organization definition of the women's health condition. And basically it was defined as this: any condition that might impact her physical, emotional, psychological, or financial well-being. If it was going to affect any of those things, then abortion was allowed. Now, you think those are going to be affected by a child? Absolutely. So it just kicked open the door, allowing abortion up through the full term, up till a baby was born. Okay? And that's been the law of the land for 48 years now. Hopefully about to change. Christian response. And this is not Church of Christ, this is Christian broad definition. Catholic and most evangelicals oppose all abortions in favor of making abortions illegal. Okay? United Church of Christ, this is not our Church of Christ, this is a different organization. Episcopal, Presbyterian, United Methodist do not approve of abortion as a means of birth control. Okay? However, they support the right of a woman to obtain abortion if she deems it's the right choice for her. That's the official church stances. These are Christian churches. They approve of abortion if a woman thinks it's the right choice for her. They favor keeping abortion legal. Okay? Through the centuries, the definition of when life begins has been debated and revised. I'm still giving you history of the Christian church here, the Christian response. Actually, before we get to that, Jewish law held that life began with first breath, okay, which would mean the child's not considered alive. This is old Jewish law, okay? I don't know where the Jews actually fall right now. Some early Christians believed, as the Greeks did, that delayed ensoulment, or that the fetus does not have a soul until quickening. Anybody know what quickening is?
Hopefully when the baby starts crying.
No. When the mama can feel the baby move. Okay, that's considered the quickening, and that was the Christian belief for centuries. That's when baby was alive. Now, what we know now is that baby begins moving 10, 11, 12 weeks, way before mom ever feels it. Okay? From the 4th century to the 16th century, most Christian philosophers viewed abortion as wrong, but were reluctant to call it murder. Okay, they drew a line. It's not the same as murder, but they frowned upon it. Okay, maybe the best way to put it. They even took a fairly tolerant view of exposing a child. This means after birth, if the family had too many kids, they would expose a child, or if a child had birth defects. Okay, the child would be left in the wilderness to die, and the church didn't really take a hard line on that. The point being, the Christians, we have a lot of blood on our hands in this. We have not handled it well. Our response has been mixed at best. Okay? Today, the Christian response has been shamefully silent and appallingly passive. This was the author's description. Of those seeking abortion, 42% identify as Protestant. 27% identify as Catholic. 31% other. given us 69% of mothers seeking abortion identify as Christians. That surprised me. That's shocking. That's shocking. Almost 3/4. Yes.
I think what really bores me also is the fact that it only applies to human beings. Animals still have a calf in them, or a puppy in them, or a kitten in them, or whatever that animal happens to be, but us people don't have people in us.
So you mean we get more upset about animals than we do babies?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they call those, if it's a dog, they call that, they don't call it a fetus, they call it the puppies inside the mother.
Right.
But for humans, that baby isn't considered much of anything.
Yes.
Wow.
It's
Endangered species, well, even eagles. If you squash an eagle egg, that's a federal offense.
yeah.
Well, that goes back to forever ago. We had animal abuse laws before we had child abuse laws. The first child abuse case in the United States, there was no statute, so she was called an animal, until that first child abuse case was actually passed. So that's been going on.
Wow.
forever.
Okay. We love our pets more than we love our children. Again, shameful, appalling. Yeah, Paul?
1971, I was going through the Los Angeles airport. This was before Roe versus Wade and all that good stuff. And there was a lady standing there, a young lady, with a clipboard, trying to get people to sign that they were for abortion. It was a petition they were trying to get.
Yeah.
She asked me to sign, and I said, I would love to sign right under your mother's name. Where did she sign?
Yeah.
Turned around and walked off. So I had to sign.
Yeah. Okay, good.
There you go.
For most of us, this issue has been more of a political issue than it has been a Bible issue because our churches have not talked about it. Okay? And when 3/4 of our young women are seeking abortion, we're obviously not talking about it enough. We've grown up, most of us, now some of y'all predate this, and I'm 57, so I was here, but for most part, politically, I've grown up with this being the law, right? That's what I'm trying to say. And we really don't think about it too much. Again, it goes back to the stigmatism that's attached to abortion. If it happens, it's kept quiet, hush, hush. The girl disappears for a while, comes back. I'm thinking back to high school. It happened a couple of times. Thinking back, I think that was the rumor that she was pregnant and had an abortion. I don't know. We don't really, it's not top of mind for our churches and us as Christians. It's more of a political issue. We may look at a candidate's position before we vote, but other than that, it doesn't really come up. I can tell you personally, at risking the chance of getting political, this is a litmus test for me. If a candidate is not pro-life, I don't vote for them. I don't care what they affiliate as. This is the one litmus test I have. I wish more Christians would adopt it. That's my opinion.
You know, right now, the government pumps a lot of money into these abortion clinics and everything else. And the big thing going around right now is why don't they stop pumping money into the abortion clinics and start pumping it into adoption? Because how many people are ready and willing to adopt?
Yeah. Well, and it goes back to this deep political division and hard questions, frankly, about a women's rights. You know, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about a little bit and how we address it. But yeah, we've got to change the narrative. And it goes to first, well, bear with me. We're getting there. So, what does the Bible say about abortion? As I said last week, it doesn't matter what my opinion is or what your opinion is. The only opinion that counts is God's opinion, right? So, Job 33:4. The Spirit of God has made me. The breath of the Almighty gives me life. In the hand of this is, in his hand is the life of every creature and the breath of all mankind. Job 1:21, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. Deuteronomy 32:39, I put to death, and I bring to life. These are the rules. These are the verses that are cited. This is the reason that suicide is considered a sin and that murder is considered a sin. We are not to have authority over life and death. That's God's realm. Okay? Most Christians have no problem with that, except when it comes to abortion, and we find that we're fairly divided, even Christians, on the legality of it. I think executions have been authorized by God. He done it pretty frequently in the Old Testament, if I remember.
But you'll see these guys out here protesting that,
Yes.
but they don't have any problem.
Yeah. Yeah. It's,
Double standard.
yeah. And on the,
There's a woman who's pregnant is killed, and then all of a sudden it's 2 deaths.
yeah. Yeah. Terribly inconsistent in our application of the law. Yeah. God and the unborn. Psalms 139, 13 through 16. For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. Galatians 1:5, but when he who has set me apart before I was born and who called me by his grace. Jeremiah 1:5, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you a prophet to the nations. Luke 1:5, for he will be great before the Lord, and he must not drink wine or strong drink, and he will be filled with the Holy Spirit, even from his mother's womb. What is that telling us? And that's not all of them, but
Yeah, God knew you before you were born. That's right.
right. God considered you
Very beginning,
a person, right?
before you were
A life.
started.
As before he even made us, he considered us a person.
Would that be under the definition of predestination?
No, predestination, at least my view, has more to do with the free will of man. When you hear that debated, that goes back into we have really no control over whether we go to heaven or hell. Okay, you're predestined, but this is more talking about the personal relationship that God has with each individual soul. Even before they are born, they are valued by God. That's the point. Okay.
Well, did Jeremiah 1:5 says, before I formed you in the womb.
Right. This is from God's mouth. This is speaking through the prophet. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you.
Yeah, so he's taking the credit for
Yes.
the nature that he set forth.
So, and that really brings us to the question. Okay, we answer this one question, all the other questions go away. All right? Who or what? Is it a person or is it a fetus?
Well, like Karen says, if a woman is beat up during a robbery or something like that, she's pregnant, she won't just be beginning to be pregnant. They'll charge her for double homicide.
Yeah.
But it's okay
Yeah, our law is
6
inconsistent.
months later to abort it, but you can't kill it.
And this is where the Christian response has been bad because we have dodged the question. So, when does life begin? When does life begin? Hands go up. Yeah.
If there's no life, it will die on its own. You will abort it yourself, and it's done.
Okay.
As long as that baby is growing, it's alive.
Yeah.
And I've read articles this week also. 2 little boys celebrated their first birthday this week. They were both born at 20 weeks,
Okay.
which is, they're saying, you know, that's viable. That's not viable. Well, yes, it is. These 2 little boys are a year old. One of our foster children was born at 26 weeks.
Yeah.
Which they used to not think they wouldn't live. He's gonna be 14 in February.
Yeah.
So scientists have made this, that they're saying as soon as that baby is conceived and those start separating, it's alive.
Yeah.
It's a person.
But yet our message from the Christian standpoint has been mixed. Yeah, Steve?
Maddie was born at 24 and a half weeks.
Okay. And that's right after the legal current standard of 22 weeks. Okay. Now think about that. A child can be born at 20 weeks, can be held in the palm of the mother's hand and be living, and it's illegal to kill that child. But if she's inside the womb, it's perfectly legal, just inches away. That's what we're talking about here. So we have to define, when does it begin? It begins at conception. Even Scripture would argue it began before that. All right? But for our purposes, it begins at conception. And once you answer that question, all the other questions go away. If the unborn is not a person, it's just merely a collection of tissues with the potential to become human, then there's no justification needed for abortion at all. Okay? That question goes away. If the unborn is a person, then there's no justification for abortion that is adequate. Okay? If we answer this one question. So that's where we got to focus our attention when we have these discussions is, when does it begin? And it begins at conception. Yeah.
I saw a bumper sticker at one point that said, if it's not a baby, you're not pregnant.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. If God recognizes the unborn, let me put it this. If God recognizes the unborn as a valuable life, then we are morally bound to honor that life in His creation. That should be the Christian position. Okay? Yeah, let's start here. Let me go back here. Yeah, you've had your hand up for a while. Sorry.
Many years ago, almost 50 years in nursing, first started out 11 years in obstetrics, worked every area there was, including the nursery. And one night, I was working, and they brought a little baby back to the nursery. It was a practicing physician who was working towards getting his full doctorship.
Okay.
And we brought this baby and said it's gone, and left. And I went over there and unwrapped this baby. I weighed it 1 pound 4 ounces. It was moving. It was crying. Everything.
Yeah.
And I put the baby in the incubator, and I pushed the emergency buzzer. Got the doctor back there, and I said, "How dare you bring this baby in here and say it's not a baby? It's gone. This baby's doing everything that a newborn baby does." And I said, "I can't leave that baby lay there and not do something to help this kid there. It is a baby who is doing everything it should."
It was trying to live.
Yes, and I was so upset. But I must push that emergency buzzer 10 times before I went off there.
Yeah.
And I just was so upset.
So you think the doctor was trying to expose the baby, basically?
Yeah, I think the younger doctor was. But
Yeah.
The doctor that delivered, when I pushed that emergency buzzer, he knew enough to know that when I pushed that buzzer, something was bad and he helped. And he come right back up there, but that young doctor didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't.
Okay. Wow, that's powerful. Yes, sir.
That's hard to talk at.
Yeah.
You know, they start out with the Holocaust happened because they didn't value their lives. And whenever you talk about sending people off to war, you need to value their lives.
Yes.
Whenever we talked about a moment of conception, the value of life, and even talking about the death penalty, it's the value of life, because it's such a harsh penalty. So we should, all lives should be valued, and even starting with the little conceived child.
Yes.
The value of life.
Yeah.
I'm the one that gets you voted.
Yeah.
The value of life spreads through and permeates all these other issues about valuing life.
That's a
Old or young.
great point. And I think if you're a student of the Holocaust, you'll find that the first thing they done was the Jews are not human. They're subhuman. They devalue them with their propaganda and with their literature and their speeches. And before long, the general population doesn't view them as human. And then it makes it, yeah. Yes. Yes.
On Lenore's statement, I don't remember if it was a film that I saw on abortion. It was a special invitation Reed asked us to. But it might have been in that. Somewhere I heard or read how they abort these babies, and even the baby in the womb is trying to scramble away to get away from this thing that they stick up in there and scramble that baby and pull it out.
I purposely took out some of my material because it is too gruesome to deal with on a Sunday morning.
Oh, sorry.
No. What I had was, it went into the details. The baby's dismembered, ripped apart. And if you remember a few years ago, and I guess I'm going to get into it anyway, there was some conversations recorded with Planned Parenthood officials who were dealing with, they thought, were medical research facilities. And they were discussing the best ways to do an abortion so that the tissue can remain intact. And they found out later through other recorded conversations that this tissue is worth a lot of money. And it's being sold to these medical facilities. And so they were negotiating on the best way to abort these babies for money. It makes me sick to my stomach. And it should you.
We all went to see at the theater concerning this exact thing, and they interviewed a lot of people that had worked in these abortion clinics and Planned Parenthood.
Yes.
That they would take out on.
Yeah. I mean, go do your own research if you can stomach it. It's horrible. It's worse than the Holocaust that upsets us. It's worse than that. Okay. If you go read how this is done. So we've got to wrap up here. I'm going to run out of time. God detests the taking of innocent life. Okay. We need to value of life. That's the issue. Bear with me. We each are going to have to answer for our response to it. Mothers, although I consider them victims in a lot of circumstances, are going to have to answer for the decision they made. Fathers who have encouraged it, grandparents who have supported it, okay? Friends who have advised it, doctors who have performed them, legislators who work to make it possible, and Christians who've had an apathetic approach towards it. Okay? The only thing that you probably have power to do is vote. And if you don't know the position of the fella or woman you're voting for, you need to find it out.
Amen.
That's really the only power you've got. And I can't think of a more important issue to vote on than this. If you can think of one, come to me after class and we'll debate it. But there's not one. This has truly been a modern Holocaust committed legally in our country. And it's been going on for 50 years.
Probably longer
Now,
than that.
there's other questions I had. Let me hit them real quick. Does the women have a right to privacy with their doctors? Absolutely. Absolutely. But that privacy, that's the problem with Roe v. Wade. It cited privacy, the woman's right to privacy. Privacy never trumps somebody's right to live, right to life. Never. Legally or spiritually. Law scholars on both sides of Roe v. Wade say it's a horrible case. It's bad law because of that issue. A woman has a right to privacy unless it trumps somebody's right to live. Should women have a right to choose? Yes. Absolutely. We'll all agree that, but no one has unlimited rights to choose. Think about this. If a toddler or a teenager is got inconvenient or too expensive, are you allowed to kill him? That's what we're talking about here. 95% of abortions are committed for the convenience of the mother, financial being one of the top things cited. Yeah, exactly. So you see don't misunderstand my point there. There are legal, some of these questions have basis, okay, and we have to listen to them, but they never trump a baby's right to live. Never. Spiritually or legally, okay? The law is bad, and hopefully it's going to be overturned. But we've got to do at least our part in supporting a baby's right to live, okay? And we haven't done that traditionally as a church. Thank you.
Thank you.